Welcome back to Carren's Couch. Welcome to this week's episode because it's all about the money. You guys have sent so many emails and so many requests into us when we put out the whole, notification of what you wanted to see. One of the number one topics that I received across my desk was, Kazza, how do we make money? And I got one really amazing email that asked me, Carren, how do I make money? Step one. And then once I've got it, how do I keep it? Because this particular person who sent me the email seems to have been on a roller coaster for most of their life. Life just seems to throw them amazing opportunities. They make great money. They feel amazing. They go buy the gorgeous car, move into a beautiful home. And then of course, opportunities as they do sometimes dry up, or sometimes we ride a bit of a roller coaster with our business strategies, and then all of a sudden the money's gone. So how do we keep it and still live a life where we feel like we've been rewarded for the effort and all the hard work that it takes in today's society to actually make an income that is more? And I really related to that. I really related to that request because for me personally, I'm a spender. It's all about the shoes, and I don't know if you can see the shoes in the shot, but it's all about the shoes. So for me, it's about the shoes, it's about the bling, it's about the travel, it's about the hair, it's about all of those things in the nail salon. You guys know me so well. You know what it's about. I'm high maintenance. Yes, I am. I'm expensive. I don't know that I'm necessarily easy either. So I reckon I'm hard work all round. But this was something that really resonated with me because, it's challenging to have enough. And I think most of us in today's society always want to have more than enough. So we have this mentality that we've got to pursue having more than enough so that then we never run out and never have to be in that situation or that sensation of lack. And I thought getting somebody to talk to us about that and talk to us about the psychology behind the difference that makes a difference. What's the difference between somebody who makes a lot of money and always has it versus somebody who makes money and loses it, or somebody who is still struggling to make their weekly, grocery bill? What's the difference that makes the difference? And there's a percentage, I think I heard somewhere that 1% of the world's population is earning 92% of the world's income. So what's the difference? Because we all go to the toilet, we all brush our teeth, we've all got to eat, and we're all the same. So what's the distinction? So to take us down the rabbit hole and to open up Pandora's box on that, I have got, hold on to your hat. Everybody take a big deep breath, get your notepad, get your pen, and get ready. Because not only do I have Australia's leading financial strategist on the show with me today, right here on Carren's Couch, but on Skype, but I also have one of Australia's spunkiest financial strategists. So please join me on welcoming to Carren's Couch the amazing Peter Audet. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for that. It's a lovely introduction. I don't know what I did to deserve that.
Well, Pete, some people it's just natural. You know what I'm saying? Pete, you were really handpicked by our producers for this show because of the nature of the questions that we get asked about money and how to make it and keep it and spend it and still feel like we're being rewarded without, everything and every cent that we spend feeling like it's, trying to draw blood out of a stone.
Yeah.
And I really love your take on finances and strategies because you're not just saying bank $10 a week. You're not just doing all of that, because if it was that easy, everybody would do it.
That's right.
Maybe. There's got to be a psychology behind, first of all, creating opportunities to make money. And then there's got to be a psychology behind how you spend it and how you keep it. And I so want to throw to you and say, give it to me, baby.
Where do you start?
Yeah.
Look, I think that there are some ground rules, some muscles that you've got to build first. And usually the best way to solve a problem is first to understand what went wrong. And I think a lot of the time we get on this wonderful treadmill of nails and hair and shoes and travel and all these other things. And
are you talking about me?
No, I'm talking about everybody, I think.
Okay.
and what you get at the end of it is a bit of financial distress, and it doesn't feel very good.
Yeah.
But it's usually very incremental, and it doesn't always happen at once. And you were really right in saying that there's this really broad range of people that have those sorts of experiences, from those who earn a lot of money who've excelled really well and then plummeted down the other side of it, all the way through to those who have very simple means. And so what you need to understand, I think, is you need to get to the heart of how people are doing the wrong thing and how to be happy with money. Because no one teaches you that, and it's not self-evident. If it was that easy, we'd all be happy all the time. And financial distress is one of the leading causes of absenteeism for employees. I think that the US government talked about just in their defence budget, they lose about $1 billion a year in people taking time off work through financial distress. So it's a global sort of epidemic. It's not just us, and it's it's worldwide, and it's very common.
And it's not necessarily a conspiracy either. Although that's another show.
How much TV you watch?
Yeah, and that's another show. I think one point that you made that's really interesting is you said that it's about figuring out what went wrong and then also figuring out how to be happy with money.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, two questions. I'll answer the first one first. Yeah. Usually the best way of figuring out what went wrong is exactly the same as going to the doctors. Sit down with someone who knows what they're talking about is always a good start.
Yeah.
And tell them what you look like now. Getting someone's balance sheet and their profit and loss, their income and their expenses, for a financial advisor, for a good financial advisor, is like getting a blood test that tells you what your glucose and your cholesterol is. You have a look at it and you see the sum of someone's endeavours, everything that they own, everything that they owe, everything they make and where it's going. And once you understand that, that's your first step in kind of getting an understanding of what they look like. And then when you hear their problems and you look at the resources that they've got at their disposal, often the answer's right in front of you. And it's often that you're spending too much money can be one of those things. Or it can be through overcommitment. Because to answer your second point, money doesn't make you happy. Everyone remembers Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yes. Food,
clothing, shelter, security, and then that sort of self-fulfillment at the top.
Yeah.
When you move from absolutely nothing in a third world country through to having food, clothing, shelter and security, that really does make you happy. And so it's a bit insidious when you come out of university and you haven't got any money and you get your first job and suddenly you go from living on the poverty line to having a great income. You really do feel happier than you did before. But from that point forward, money doesn't make you any happier. Only love and friends and family make you happy. Money just is a means to an end. But the negative is true. If you've got enough for food, clothing, shelter and security and you jeopardise it, it makes you unhappy.
Yeah.
And whatever time you had to yourself stops being enjoyable. So you can have all weekend off. But if you have all weekend off broke, it's a horrible feeling.
So let's explore that a little bit in terms of the psychology of somebody who is able to do what it takes. And sometimes it does mean not going to the nail salon, and sometimes it does mean walking past the shoe store. And I've learnt that over the course of the years.
Yeah.
And that's pretty basic. It seems pretty simple, but I think it's challenging for a lot of people. What's the psychology between somebody who is able to make those decisions for themselves and stick to them consistently, versus somebody who might say, yep, okay, I'm going to save for the week. I'm not going to do anything this weekend. I'm not drinking. I'm not doing anything. I'm going to, pocket my pennies. And then the following week they go blow it all. It's almost like the money has to burn a hole in their pocket. What's the psychology behind that from your research?
Some of this is empirical evidence and some of it's a bit anecdotal, so you'll have to forgive me for being sexist for a minute. But if you take the point that there's a lot of if you look statistically, there's a lot of men in higher paid incomes. There's a lot of inequality between men and women in earnings. And I think that ranges broadly across our society.
Yeah.
You're also completely aware of the fact that men are really, really bad at asking for help.
Yeah.
So Lauren would have me pull over and ask for directions, and I refuse to do so because men don't ask for help. We solve things ourselves. That's our job.
Right.
But to make good financial decisions, you need two or three things. You need to have some context. In other words, where am I now and where am I getting to? What's my goal in life? And is buying this new car or spending this extra $400,000 on a renovation or going to Europe and spending 50 grand on a holiday getting me any closer to my goals or not? And most of the time we don't ask ourselves that question. We just have a look at the bank account, say, hey, we've got 50 grand, there's a holiday for 50, let's go. And we'll think about all the other things that life will demand of us when they come up, school fees when they arrive, the retirement as it gets closer becomes more relevant, but in your 40s or your 30s you don't care so much. So we make all these decisions out of context. We're all very time poor compared to what we used to be.
Yeah.
And I think that's evident in the way that we can remain more connected like this. We don't have to be in the same room together.
Yeah.
And so we can get a lot more done in a day. You can, and I often do, answer my last email 3 minutes before I close my eyes when I go to sleep.
Yeah.
So we're time poor, we're making decisions out of context. But the third one is the biggest one, which is that we're emotionally attached. Now, if you're good at asking for help, what you'll find is the person that you're asking for help, if it's outside the family unit, isn't emotionally attached. So if you say to me, I want to spend 250 grand on a Mercedes Benz, I'm not going to be in love with the Mercedes Benz, you are.
Yeah.
And so I've got this unbiased arm's length opinion of saying that's ridiculous. But all you're thinking about is what you'll look like in it, where you're going to drive it, how much fun it's going to be. People walk into houses and imagine themselves entertaining in that kitchen. It's so emotional that and all the things you talked about are emotional. Getting your hair done, buying clothes, buying shoes, traveling. It's all these beautiful emotional payoffs. And so this influence of emotion is such a huge factor for all of us, that without being the sort of person that asks for help, and like I said, most men don't, they make all these decisions for themselves. They're time poor, they possibly aren't setting their context, and they're certainly emotionally attached to the outcomes. And the end result of that is poor decision making.
So what's ideal? What's a mindset around money that if somebody's been on that treadmill, and most people are on that treadmill, what's ideal? What's a mindset that we can strive towards to try and make a break in that, try and interrupt that pattern of the way that we relate to money? I often think that the way that we relate to money and food is the way that we relate to life in general, because those are the very things that sustain us. And if we're relating to money from a place of lack, or money is evil, or money doesn't grow on trees, or we've got some kind of staged mindset around money, it's always going to influence how we get it and what we do with it when we've got it. Yeah. And then again, as you say, how we respond when we don't have it, in that place of unhappiness. Like, does that then put us into the depths of despair and depression, or is that then a springboard to propel us forward to go and make it again? I think everybody relates differently to it, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, some people are really good with a foot in their back. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's a very healthy foot. If you look at the incidence of anxiety and depression and things that relate to issues of money, can have quite a catastrophic effect. Food, as you said, is a great analogy, because what happens in life is that we don't set off trying to, maybe life isn't like a box of chocolates, but it is a little bit like a cake. That if you said, well, the ingredients for a happy and well-balanced financial life are making sure that you control the things that you can control. So you're in control of how much you earn, and if you don't earn enough, you have to take steps. You have to shift your action to improve your lot. And that's something that a financial advisor can't help you with, other than telling you that that's what you've got to go and do.
Yeah.
Get more education, work smarter, apply your skills better, change your profession to something that better suits who you are and what you want to do. But you have to make the money. We can't make it for you. But once you're generating a level of wealth, then the decisions and the things that you make, if you do it in a balanced way, so if you sit down and say, here's what we look like today, and here's our things that we have to achieve. We must retire at some stage. It's inevitable.
Yeah.
We must educate our children, and it's a pretty good idea to pay off our house, amongst other things in your life that you want to achieve. And then make every decision in the context of all the things that you want to achieve, making sure that you don't spend more than what you make.
Yeah.
You end up finding that it's the balance of never running out of money that keeps people happy. It doesn't make them happy. It keeps people happy. But if you run out of it, it definitely makes you unhappy. So you're in charge of making yourself happy, but you're also the greatest influence over making yourself unhappy with money as well.
Do you know, I'm sitting here getting some epiphanies actually as I'm imagining myself in that whole scenario. Because, from a financial perspective, I consider myself to be just like a normal person. But there's something that, I don't know if our viewers and our listeners are going to feel the same way about this. I'm just really asking this question for myself. And hopefully there are others who are like me. I may say that I want to pay off my house or, move into another home or, have a financial objective that I want for myself. And I'll set that goal and I'll be connected to that goal probably for a week, a month, or possibly even 3 months at best. But then something else will take my attention or something else will require my input. And sometimes it's a want and sometimes it's a need.
Yeah.
And then the goal takes a back seat because the distance between me and that goal is too far. I'm 44 and the distance between being 44 and retiring, as you were saying earlier, it's inevitable, but the distance between where I am now and where that goal is, it's too far for me to worry about today. So if there's a fabulous pair of shoes, I'm probably going to go get them. That's it's really just an analogy, but the distance between the goal and where we are at the time, sometimes there's too much time in there, which then allows us to get distracted with other things. And then when it comes a necessity for that goal to be in place, then unhappiness becomes the anti-reward.
Yeah.
If there's such a word, I just created it.
I know what you mean.
Yeah. What's your answer to that?
I think that if you really want to understand what a good financial advisor does, then you start with, I don't know if you've ever watched the TED's videos about, you see Simon Sinek talk about the why that we do things.
Yeah.
The why, the how, and the what, I think is the way that he breaks it down. Why am I a financial advisor? I love to help people. And there's nothing that makes me happier in life than helping anyone with anything, no matter what it is. So the fact that I've landed in this job where I get to help people make good decisions all the time is lovely because it's never a chore. So that's why I turn up for work. The how of what we do is that we believe that if people make good decisions in context all the time, then they're in that space where they'll be able to maintain a level of happiness because all of their decisions become relevant. And that's the most important thing. And that might be where you really find the true value in getting external advice because I still go to a personal trainer, even though I know how to do squats and I know how to do bench press, but I do it better when I've got a coach. I do it more rigidly. I don't break form. I do it properly and I do it every Monday, Wednesday and Friday. And if I was left to my own devices, I'd make poor decisions. And I think it's the same with money, that left to your own devices, people make lots and lots of poor decisions. And it's just a fact of life. The how at the end that or the what you actually get from a financial advisor should predominantly be advice. Product sort of comes into it eventually, but the advice, the bit that says, here's a good way of making decisions and building some muscles around that, by far the most important thing.
I think the point that you're making around that building muscles, around making good financial decisions, we don't learn that at school. Kids are not taught how to manage their money. We don't learn how to have a empowering and an empowered relationship with money. We don't discover that until we reach that level of unhappiness where we go, oh, yeah. I was getting my paycheck and now I can't pay my bus fare to get to work. So, now it's all gone pear-shaped.
Yeah.
So we only start to get that perspective as we get a little bit older, and as the stakes get higher. You throw kids into the mix and you throw, homes and cars and all of that. The stakes are much higher. I think building the financial muscles and having a coach is a really important point that you're making. That if we knew better, we would have already done better a long time ago. If we knew how to have great, biceps. Is that a bicep?
That's a bicep.
That's a bicep. So if we knew how to get good biceps, show off. If we knew how to get that, we would have already had it ourselves. But having the coach there to go on the ride with us makes sure that it happens, and we're not just relying on our own undeveloped muscles to get us there.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important point.
Yeah. And look, it's simple things too. This is not really complex. It's simple things like, don't forget, 2 years from now, interest rates could go up. And so while things feel affordable today, 2 years from now they may not be, and that could jeopardise the level of achievement of those goals and therefore your happiness, particularly if it affects cash flow.
Yeah.
Don't forget that in 4 years' time, you've got school fees coming up. I had a client in Sydney who lives in Bondi, and typical Bondi, you spend $2 million on a house, you don't get a driveway. So they wanted to upgrade to a $3 million house because you could get a driveway 3 or 4 streets away. You got to love Bondi.
Oh.
And the trade-off was you can't have another baby, because there was the context. If you do this today, you can afford it, but you can't afford it if you take 12 months off to have a child. Pick which one you want.
Yeah.
And she's due in June, so that's what she picked.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. But you're right. Everything comes at a cost. You're either going to go for this or go for that. But either way, there's a trade-off.
And look, the other part of that that's really important, and you talked about this idea of retirement seems so far away. It's a very, very difficult thing to solve, not having enough money in retirement when you get really close to it.
Yeah.
If you start now when you're 44, and you and I are both 44, so you start when you're 44 and you say, I've got 8 things I need to achieve between now and 60, and that's one of them, and you balance it out so that everything gets a bit of attention. None of them are a drain, and you get to enjoy all the things that you want to. But I can absolutely promise you, from having lots of retirees as clients, those with enough money to live on are happy. And those without money, or those without enough money to satisfy the life that they wanted, which is the most important thing, they're not just unhappy, they are perpetually unhappy. They are obsessed with the fact that they don't have enough. And they are at that time in their lives where there's no reversing. You can't go back to work when you're 73 and start all over again. You've got what you got. And the only way to do something about it is at 44, not at 64. So... it is really important to grow up a bit with this sort of stuff and say, hey, I'm an adult. At some stage, I've got to take some responsibility. And I think this is, if you want to motivate anyone, this is the greatest word to think about, and that is having dignity. Because if I'm 75 and I'm broke and my children have to take care of me, my dignity is going to get knocked around like no one's business, and I don't want to be that person. And so you need to find your own way of motivating yourself to want to make sure that you have your own dignity and pride and capacity for taking care of yourself all the way through. And if that's the sort of person that you are, you will hate getting there and not having enough. And it's these days, retirement can be 30 years long. And I don't like going a week without having enough money to live on, let alone 30 years. It's a tough gig.
Do you know, you've kind of highlighted something there, or a couple of things there, in terms of what you said. It's about growing up when it comes to the money side of things. And I think whether you're 25 or you're 45. I think it's about being mature about your money and recognizing that that is almost the gateway, what is the gateway pretty much to achieving that level of happiness and sustaining it. So if we're mature about that, then we've got a pathway that's about the quality of life, not just about the job that we have or the, whether we drive an expensive car, because it's really not that important. It's more about the quality of the life that we live, because either way, and I have this statement that I make all the time, is that either way we're going to land up in a box one day. We all are, either way it's happening. So it just, the quality of the ride that we have on the journey is determined by the choices we make and the decisions that we make. And the other thing that you mentioned there was about responsibility, and I think participating in the present moment rather than allowing, we've got these goals. We want to pay off our home, or we want to buy a home, or we want to pay off the car, or we want to buy a car, we want to start a family or sustain a family. All of those are objectives and our goals that we tend to, as people, lose track of because of other things that distract us. But if we're present and in the moment and saying, I'm about to make a decision, I'm about to buy a $300 pair of shoes, if that's what it is, and we're present in the moment and saying, well, that $300, would that be better serving me somewhere else if I was responsible for achieving that objective? Yeah. If I took responsibility for it. I love that. I think it's so potent and so important.
And I think that if you want a real tip for things that throw people off that, because this is probably the biggest one that throws people a curveball, they often say that when you're on a diet, what you have to make sure not to do is eat because you smell food even though you're not hungry. Because sometimes what happens as human beings is, even if we're not hungry, something smells great and we're drawn to it and we buy it even though we don't need it, or we eat it when we should be abstaining from doing it because we're drawn into it. Yeah. The greatest thing that throws people off still, and this is going to happen forever, is trying to keep up with the Joneses. And even though we think we're getting over it, I guarantee Facebook has made it worse because we all get to see what everyone's got. So here's my absolute golden tip for anybody is every time you see someone with the bigger house or the bigger car and you get jealous and you want to keep up with them and go and buy what they've got, first always think, imagine if they wore their balance sheet on their T-shirt. Imagine if it didn't just say, here's my big house and here's my big car, but it said, here's how much I owe, here's how much my credit card debt is. Yeah. Because so often what you see is, I can't believe they went broke. How many times do you hear that? They looked like they were doing so well. I can't believe they went broke. But it is actually the evidence that you're seeing. Of course they look like they were doing well. They spent so much money. They bought the biggest house. They had the biggest car. They took the overseas trips. They had no contingency plan for anything. They spent it up. Everyone was jealous and wished they were them, and then they're broke. So don't judge the person by what you see. Try and consider how much debt they might be in to achieve the things that they've got, and try and park your jealousy and always make your own decisions in the context of your own family, your own resources, and your objectives and goals, not anyone else's, because they might not have 5 kids that they want to send to private school. Yeah. They might not want $150,000 a year of income in retirement. Yeah. They might have made completely different decisions to you. Or they might just be bloody irresponsible and you're following the worst behaving person around. You've got to be careful
and you'd never know.
No, you never will. And the prolification of the amount of debt we can get ourselves into these days is huge. And the margin for error is very small. You can't make mistakes like you used to. Housing's so much more expensive than it was in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah. I think that's really important. We are, humans judge. That's one thing we do. We're always constantly judging ourselves and judging each other based on what we see. And it's never the reality. It's never what's real. So we can think somebody's an amazing success, and it happens in business as well. People, we were just having this conversation before we started shooting this episode, was that a lot of people look at people in business or people who have great success and say, I want what they've got. That looks like an amazing life. They look like they're really happy. But the reality is their eyes are bursting out of their heads because they can't cope with the amount of debt, or they can't cope with the stress.
Yeah.
Or they didn't get there overnight. It wasn't an overnight success. They made great financial and strategic decisions that have delivered them this amazing life. And yes, of course it is amazing, but it doesn't come at the sacrifice of anything because they've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Pete, in terms of, for our listeners and our viewers, have you got, I guess, 3 key strategies that you could leave us with that could perhaps shift a mindset and have us take more strategic choices when it comes to money?
Yeah. Look, I think by far the most important thing is to breathe. So every time you go to make a financial decision, just take a breath.
Yeah.
And stop for 5 minutes. Just give it 5 minutes, no matter what it is, and think about the context of your entire life and all the things that you're trying to achieve. Try and bring back into your mind all of your goals and not just the excitement of the Harley Davidson that's sitting in front of you, because that's what happens. And I had to take a bit of my own medicine because I took
Don't you hate that?
I took Lauren down to Harley with me, and she put me back in the car and said, well, as soon as the mortgage is gone, it's all yours. So sometimes it's nice just to be told, but it is good. But it is good because you take a breath and you go, you know what, I get the emotional floods coming in. I'm smelling the food. I want to eat it, but am I really hungry?
Yeah.
Or do I just want it because I'm going to get the big 6-week payoff of excitement for my new thing that then is just going to become the routine part of my life?
Yeah.
Because I think that you always try and think about it like this. If you've bought the best house in the street and all of your friends come over and you love entertaining, imagine you being at home on your own when they all go to Fiji for a week and you can't afford it because you have the house and you realise that the only thing that's really important to you is being with your friends.
Yeah.
So you've got to make sure that you haven't just got so excited about the stuff and forgot about what's really, really important. I know that's a bit philosophical, but like you said, you can't take it with you. And the only things that will really make you happy will be the love and enjoyment of friends and family. And if you give all of that up to own stuff, it's a huge mistake. So take a breath. That's the rule number 1.
I love that.
Take a breath, set some context around that before you make a decision. Try and see if you can get someone's opinion who's not emotionally involved is always really good. So get a second opinion. Now, obviously, I'm a financial advisor and I would say see a financial advisor.
Yeah.
But you can really talk to anyone who is somewhat of an expert. But you want to do it in the context of understanding your goals all the time. But try and get someone who's out of the emotion to help you with that.
And an expert is important too, Pete. I really want to hone in on that, because you can talk to your mum, or you can talk to your dad, or you can talk to your brother or your sister or your girlfriend, yet their perspective on money won't be much different to yours because we're all in the same kettle together. So it is important to have a coach and to have an expert on your side so that you're making informed decisions rather than either confirmed or not,
Yeah, I'm probably being a bit, I'm avoiding the shameless plug. But you're right. You probably do need to see someone who really knows what they're talking about, because we're not emotionally involved, but we understand legislation and we understand the boundaries of things and how things work so that you can get the best outcome. And we don't care if you love the kitchen or not. We just care about whether you're happy or not. And I think we recognise that. Well, we can all see that if you buy an ice cream, you're going to be happy for 5 minutes, but it's not going to sustain you in your retirement. There's 2 sorts of happiness. There's your short-term payoff, and then there's the one that takes you through. So, but the other thing that's interesting too for the last sort of rule, so set some context and make a good decision with some help.
Yeah.
But the last one is to actually do things. People's failure to implement can be one of the reasons that they don't do as well, because they get a bit organised. But they're so busy that they actually don't go, okay, I need to pay more money into super. I'll get to that. I need to make sure I'm getting the cheapest interest rate. I'll get to that. Make sure your wills and powers of attorney are in place, that you're that your debt structure's right, all these different sorts of things that you can do. But we're so busy that you go, look, I'll get to all of it at some stage, and then you don't get around. So this failure to implement can cost people, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars over their lives. And yet you've gone to the same effort at work every day, whether you were efficient or not. You've got up every morning, you've worked hard all day, you've enjoyed time with your family, you've done all the right things. But if you don't get organised and implement, you can just be wasting money that otherwise could have helped build your wealth and give you a greater level of comfort at some stage in your life when you need it. So implementation can be really important.
It makes so much sense. It sounds so easy.
Yeah. It is easy as long as you do it all the time.
My sister actually said to me once when I was growing up and I was just starting to figure out how to use money. And she said to me, you know what? She said, you've spent everything that you've earned, so you may as well not have gone to work. And you're working 16-hour days, so you may as well not have gone because you've spent everything. And it was a lesson that I learned really, really early. And of course, it's challenged by shoes, but it's a lesson that I learned really early in the piece. So Pete, tell us, if anybody wants to find out more about you personally or where they can get support from where you are and what you do, where do we look? Where do we go? What do we do?
Well, I think for us the best way would be to start on our website, which is varia.com.au, and I'm sure you'll be sharing that with people somehow.
We definitely will. There will be a link on the bottom of this page.
In that website, we kind of talk people through the journey of the context, decision and action part.
Awesome.
Because ultimately, like I said, that's really what we do. And I think that's the most important distinction, that if people come to understand that when you come to see an advisor, we're not starting with an institution and a product that we want you to have. We're starting with a need to understand who you are and where you want to be and make some great decisions around that. And then if we have to get a will, we'll get a will. And if we have to buy some superannuation, we'll get that sorted out. But they just become the thing that you get at the end.
Yeah.
All the smart decisions, all of those smart decisions and the best use of your human capital, they're the things that build wealth. The rest is just hygiene. It's just a necessity that needs to be done. But you will not, the product stuff, the buying 10 investment properties, that will never overcome making a series of bad decisions. No matter how good the market is, ultimately it can be a real downfall. You must make really sensible decisions first, know where you're going and what you're doing first, and then, buy the vehicle last. No point in buying a Porsche to go four-wheel driving. You need to know what it is that you need first before you go and buy the product that suits you. So, and if your financial advisor starts with product first, leave the room.
Leave the room?
You're in the wrong place.
And that's really good advice too, because I think that's certainly from the feedback that we've had through social media and the emails that we've had. I think that a lot of people not a lot of people, I don't know, just from the people who have been engaging with our show, tend to try and stay away from the financial advising industry purely because they don't know where to go to find somebody that they can trust. Not only are you're handing over your full life's journey to a complete stranger, but then you're about to have this great onslaught of product sold to you at your most vulnerable place. So I think that today's interview with you has actually been really valuable because you've shed light on the right way of working with an advisor, is that your priority is to have people be happy and to find that level of happiness and then sustain it. Everything over and above that is what it is, but it's a finding the level of sustainability for happiness is what everybody is in pursuit of. There's nobody that doesn't want that. Everybody wants that for themselves and for their family,
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so it's wonderful. Thank you.
Oh, that's all right. Had a great time.
Well, we've reached the end of our time, which is a little bit sad, but it's been very insightful and it's been very informative, and I'm really grateful that you've taken the time to have a chat with us about this.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
I know we're going to get a lot of feedback and a lot of inquiry about it because money is a big thing. So Pete, would you be interested, based on our viewers and our listening audience, would you be interested in coming back and doing perhaps a question and answer session with us when we get the feedback from our audience?
Only if I get to come and sit on the couch at the beach with you. I think that'll be much more pleasant.
Consider it done.
Fantastic.
Too easy. Awesome.
Fine.
Well, thank you so much, and we'll look forward to seeing you again back on Carren's Couch. Thanks, Pete.
Thanks, Carren. It was lovely.
Thank you. And for all of our listeners and all of our viewers, you have been absolutely treated today, and we are definitely going to get Peter Audet back in and on the show, because I think that there's still so much more that we can cover and make it very specific to what you guys want to know. So that's your invitation right here, right now. Go to our Facebook page, which is allthews.facebook.com/Carren's Couch. And please go nuts. Post all your questions, anything that you want to know. I'm personally going to sit down with Pete and we're going to go through your questions and we're going to compile a show together that's going to address everything that you need to know to help move you forward and answer your unanswered questions about money. Also, go to this particular page where this video is sat, and you'll find that there's a comments box underneath Pete's website where you can ask any questions and make any comments about your own financial decision. And anything that you want to have kept anonymous, trust us, everything is safe. What comes on Carren's Couch stays on Carren's Couch. You can take that to the bank. So thank you so much for tuning in with us again on Carren's Couch this week. We look so forward to seeing you here again on our next episode. Stay happy, and we'll see you again with your unanswered questions. Bye for now.